Hello? Cat's jumping at shadows. So it's been around 3 years since my last actual video, and I haven't really done an unscripted video like this before, but I had a session get canceled yesterday, D&D session get canceled yesterday, and then I had another one get canceled today, right at the cusp of a really bad cliffhanger too, because I mean it's Barovia. It's fucking Barovia. Nothing ever goes well in Barovia. But I'm in this D&D mood, and without the D&D, I just kind of wanted to talk about D&D and this topic that's been kind of at my mind for a little bit. That I think I've only seen one other channel actually cover until now. So this is kind of a follow-up to Candlekeep Ramsey's proactive versus reactive players. This is a topic that's been on my mind for a little while now, and I just wanted to kind of dive into it again. D&D is on my mind right now, so I wanted to get this out there somewhere, and I haven't made a video in a while, so, why not something D&D related? Maybe I become a D&D tuber or something. I don't know. We'll see how this goes. Reactive versus proactive players is kind of an interesting topic for me, especially since I haven't seen anybody else except for Candlekeep Ramsey discuss that topic before. I'm sure there are some Reddit threads on it or something, but on YouTube, his was the only video that I could find. So I wanted to define what those terms actually mean, or what I think they mean, and how a DM can properly react to those players at the table. Because I think at this point, I've been DMing for over 2 years now, probably somewhere in the ballpark of 2.5. And I feel like I've gotten a good feel for how a DM should theoretically approach their table. And I do want to preface this by saying that every player is going to fall somewhere in the middle. There isn't ever going to be just a purely proactive player or a purely reactive player. Even though you can very much lean towards one or the other, you have to be doing some proactive movement and some reactive movement at some point. Now there are players that I've seen don't really act proactively at all. But again, let's define those terms. So a proactive player is someone who is pushing the story forward, pushing the group forward, possibly. They are someone who is not reacting to situations, although, of course, you do that too, but you create situations. You are looking for NPCs to talk to. You are the one perhaps leading your group into the dungeon. You are someone who is trying to solve mysteries at any given point, right? While a reactive player is very different, where they are the person who, once they have a situation come to them, they decide what they want to do. They don't create situations. They either wait for other players to create them, or they wait for DMs to create that situation. So these are two very different styles of playing the game. I don't think either one is wrong. But I think it is important for DMs to kind of know which ones each of your players are and how to react accordingly to that. Because if you have a proactive player, and especially if they're a very strong role player, one proactive player can essentially become a leader, which I'll get into a little bit later. So how do you DM for a proactive versus a reactive player? So proactive players are, to a certain extent, I think, easier to DM for. And while, again, everyone kind of falls in between these, right? No one is going to be purely proactive, and no one's going to be purely reactive. So for an example, let's say that you have a player that's entering a new city, and they have good information that there is a rogues guild within it. A proactive player is going to be actively looking for that rogues guild, perhaps trying to suss out who the leader is, trying to see who knows thieves can't, looking for any markings on walls or where their hideout is going to be. While a reactive player, when they enter the city, is going to be waiting for the thieves guild to come to them. They're going to be waiting for the story to come to them. They're not looking for the thieves guild leader. They're not trying to figure out where they're stationed. Things like that. So how do you DM for each of those? How do you approach the different situations? I think that with a proactive player, it can be easier to a certain extent, at least, depending on the group, because obviously you don't have just, one player at the table, or at least most people don't. With a proactive player, you can set up situations, you can set up NPCs, and when they go looking for them, it kind of makes your job easier because you don't have to create the situation yourself. It does require you to do more improv, but less prep work ahead of time. So with a proactive player, if they're looking for the Thieves Guild leader and they're going through different alleyways, perhaps they're looking through taverns trying to find out where their hideout might be, you can have the world react to them as opposed to the other way around. With reactive players, let's say you do want to get them towards the Thieves Guild and perhaps they lack the confidence, perhaps they are unsure of where to start. Things like that can make a reactive player instead, or perhaps, that's just their personality type. I think that's just how a lot of people are when they play D&D. You have to bring the Thieves Guild to them. Maybe the Thieves Guild leader wants to recruit them for a job that they don't want their own men to do. Maybe they happen to just stumble across a symbol in the Thieves Guild that leads them towards it, or maybe the Thieves Guild is doing something bad in the city and they get recruited by someone who wants them dealt with. But you can kind of see the difference here, where proactive players are going to be the ones actively looking for the thing, and reactive players are the ones that they want the thing to come to them. And again, I don't think either of these are really a positive or a negative. Like I said, I think that proactive players require more improv skills, while reactive players require you to set up a little bit more in the regards to situations. And so it is kind of finding that balance for any individual person and what they like, and just this might be something that they don't realize, and I think it's something that a lot of people don't talk about, because Candlekeep Ramsey here is really the only person, like I said, that I've seen discuss this. So what do you do when some of your players are reactive and some are proactive? Proactive players tend to be leaders. Reactive players tend to be followers. That is, I think, kind of a universal truth in D&D. Having a singular proactive person at a table and, let's say, 3 reactive people can be a good thing. Having really any mixture of them, as long as the players are cooperating and adjusting to each other. Perhaps that takes a few sessions at times. Perhaps that's something, people figure out as early as session 1 or session 2, because figuring out who's going to be a proactive or a reactive player is not something that gets done in session 0, let's be real. But if you want your group to be more proactive, because they are the ones primarily driving the story. The DM runs the world, they run the villains, they run the NPCs, but the players are driving their own story. So you want everyone, to at least a certain extent, to be proactive. But for the more reactive players, sometimes that just isn't always going to be an option, at least, depending on the type of campaign you're in. So you want to set up situations that get their character involved. Or your more proactive players are the ones leading them. They can be leaders. And the difference between a leader and a leader and a bad leader, honestly, is that leaders are people who try to direct the group towards what everyone wants to do. So a good leader is going to be someone who breaks down, hey, we have 3 options, 3 viable options on where we want to go next. What does everyone want to do? A bad leader is someone who is generally a proactive player, but they aren't going to be someone who includes others' opinions on what they want to do. So a bad leader is going to be, hey, here are the 3 options. I'm going to say that we go do A, and let's just ignore B and C for now. We'll come back to that. They don't involve other players. They just want to do their thing. And even honestly, there are proactive players who aren't leaders, who think that they're leaders and will just kind of decide for the group. I've heard horror stories about that. XP to level 3 has made plenty of those, and they're quite entertaining. So ultimately, this is something that can kind of balance out with your own group, because if you have, a couple people who are leaders, well, before I get into that, let's talk about what followers are. Followers are generally going to be reactive players. Not every proactive player is going to be a leader, and I don't think necessarily every reactive player is going to be a follower. but I think that's tends to be how it is. So a follower is someone who just goes along with what the leader wants to do. Perhaps they're scared to put their own opinion in on things, they're afraid of making the wrong decision, or just, generally in real life, they don't have the wisdom or experience or whatever to step into that kind of role. And I feel like in general, reactive players tend to be people who are new to D&D, while followers tend to be just younger people in general. If you're, 21 or whatever, you might not have the life experience to be a leader, or perhaps you just don't know D&D very well, you don't know the mechanics very well, so you're unsure of how to lead. But anyway, ideally your group balances out each other a little bit, because if you have too many leaders in a group, if everyone wants to be a leader and everyone has different ideas of what they want to do, they can end up butting heads. And if you have a bunch of reactive players, if you have a bunch of people who are followers, then you have a bunch of people who don't know what to do or where they want to go. So it is a very tricky thing trying to make adjustments in that regard, where you have to set up situations for some of your players, and for others you really don't, because the leaders can't just always decide what the other players are going to do. They can decide perhaps where the group goes, or again, lead the group towards where people want to go, but they can't make decisions for them. And that's where DMing is going to be, difficult. This is going to be one of the more intricate and in-depth things to learn for any GM, because, not everyone knows their players that well. This is something that is not going to, you're not going to come across this in the first, couple sessions. You're not going to be able to get the read on your players that easily, and how you have to GM for them. And sometimes if you're playing a completely sandbox world where the players can go wherever they want, you can put a million points of entry. You could have a bunch of NPCs requesting a bunch of different things, but if all your players are strictly followers, even if they are reactive, they might not decide where to go because they're unsure of themselves. Meanwhile, if you have a bunch of leaders, then they could be too certain of themselves, and everyone has a different idea of what they want to do, and they want to lead each other in different directions. So I think every group dynamic is going to be best when you have both in a group, at least I think, personally. Is that something you can really control? No. And this is just something that I might not even have advice for, because I haven't DM'd for a full group of leaders, and I haven't DM'd for a full group of followers, or the same for reactive and proactive. So, I don't know. Again, this video is just me getting my thoughts out and rambling, and y'all can see my actual room for the first time in forever. So that's Joker from Persona 5 because he's cool. Lucina, and then the last one's Dimitri, which you can't see because of the light. But I do have my Three Houses shirt on to make up for that a little bit. So I guess the big takeaway that I want DMs to get from this video is find out which one your players are and what your group is in general. Find out what the dynamic is, and then perhaps change or, adjust your DMing style as you see fit for it. Because I think once you're aware of something like this, and you can make the world react in different ways, you can react to them differently as a DM, it's going to make things a little bit easier for you. And if you're a player, I think it's a good thing to try to figure out which one you are and make sure that you're not leaning too heavily in either direction, in my opinion. Because if you're purely reactive and you're not progressing the story yourself, I just don't think that's as fun of an experience. And again, perhaps you're just uncertain of the mechanics of D&D because you're new. Perhaps you're just afraid of making the wrong decision at times. But it's D&D. We're all playing a role-playing game. We're all there to have fun and make good stories, and mistakes are part of that. And inevitably, you're going to make mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes in D&D. So if you're a reactive player and that's holding you back, I guess just don't let it. And if you are a proactive player and a leader, but you're one of those leaders that I talked about where you're deciding for the group what to do, don't do that. You want to be the person that gets everyone's opinions on what to do and where to go, and, is someone who leads, doesn't just walk off and expect people to follow you. So yeah, there's my rant. I wanted to talk about D&D for a little bit and get some of this off my mind, I guess. I don't know if I'm going to do more videos like this in the future that are just, this was completely unscripted. If you couldn't tell, it's way different from my other videos. But I do want to talk about D&D more in the future, and on days like today, where I just want to talk into a mic and a camera and spill my thoughts out that I've, been thinking of for the past handful of months, I might do that. I'm sure I'll think of other topics in the future. So, hope you enjoyed. More of this will probably be to come. I'll see you guys later. Look at her. Look at her. She's a demon. Absolute demon. But she's precious and cute. That's what matters. Yeah. Like I said, demon.